Hey everybody, I'm Vasel, and welcome to the Dice Tower as we continue to go through my favorite games from different publishers. Now today is kind of a part two, because we're talking about Thames and Kosmos games, and today I'm talking about their smaller box games. I already did their bigger box. They're such a big company that I split this list into the big box games and smaller box games. Now, I did this partially because Kosmos two-player line is one of the most influential and famous series in board gaming. They're really just fantastic games, although they've had a lot of stinkers along the way too. And just when I was first getting into the hobby and into the hobby world in the late 90s and early 2000s, these were top tier. These games were being talked about everywhere, and each one coming out was a bit of an event. This has kind of faded as time has gone by, although many of these games have been reprinted or still are in print by other companies or by Kosmos themselves. And of course, there's a couple games on here that are not part of that line, which I just think are fantastic. So here we go, my top 10 small box games from Kosmos. Number 10, Heave Ho! So this was a tough one because there was a lot of games on the bottom, that made 10. I actually have Kahuna here and cross it off. I had a tough one. Heave Ho is a really silly game. It's about a tug of war, a Scottish tug of war, and you're playing cards on your side or your opponent's side, trying to pull this rope back and forth and win some whiskey barrels. That's the whole thing. It's silly. It's fun. It has funny artwork, and there's a little bit of strategy in it too as you decide what cards to play, where and when. It's just a very enjoyable game, Heave Ho. Number 9 is the very opposite of Heave Ho in a sense. It's Babel. Now, this is one of the meanest games. I remember I don't quit games very often, but I wanted to quit my first play of Babel because I got so trounced by my opponent. And when I was like, I will struggle to come back, and they beat me down. Now that I know how the game works, it is what it is. And I've learned it and I like it, but you have to go into that being prepared. Your opponent is going to be playing cards, and you're building these little ziggurats in the middle, and they're going to smash it down. They're going to get rid of your cards. You're going to build up your hand. They're going to play something to make you lose half the cards in your hand. And some of you are thinking that doesn't sound fun at all. And I would say you should probably not try the game out then, but you might like it, because I came around to really enjoy it, just going in knowing it's kind of a bit of a fist fight of a game. But it is entertaining, it's interesting, and there's not a lot of games like it. That is Babel. Number 8 is Balloon Cup. Balloon Cup nominated for the Spiel des Jahres. That's how popular this game was. And this has been remade. I believe there's a Pinata Party version out there and such. But in this game, the Balloon Cup, your balloons, you're trying to make them go higher or lower. And so it's very similar to many of these card games where you're playing cards on your opponent's side or your side, trying to make a balloon go higher or not, and then win the cup of that version by getting points at the end of the game. And so you're trying to outthink your opponent, but it's also very light and breezy. Stephen Glenn, the designer, has made many, many games. This is easily the most popular one that he has done. And for a while, this rivaled in the Kosmos line as the most popular game of that line. Number 7 is a tie, but that's because they're essentially the same game. So I'm just going to say it's Jambo, but Asante also works here. Asante was the sequel to Jambo, and you can mix them together because they literally are the same game. There's minor differences in how the game itself played out, but like I said, you can mix them, so it's the same game system. Jambo's a good game of trading in a two-player game. And there's not many games that do that. In this game, you have markets, and you're collecting cards. You have artifact cards, which give you special abilities. Animal cards, which attack your opponent. You're trying to trade. You're trying to buy these resources, then sell them. It's a really simple game, but it feels like a bigger game. It feels more complex and open than many of the games in their line. So number 7, Jambo and Asante. Number 6, let's jump over to Lord of the Rings now. Now, there's been several games from Lord of the Rings, and many of them did not make the list here. We have Lord of the Rings The Duel, which is a decent game about Gandalf versus the Balrog on a bridge. Then there's Lord of the Rings The Search, which is a terrible game. But I'm talking about Lord of the Rings Confrontation. Now, interesting enough, this one's in my small box list, and some of you might say, this is a big box. That's right, Fantasy Flight remade this game later on and put it in a bigger box for no reason. It doesn't need to be in the bigger box. But this is Lord of the Rings Stratego. That's exactly what this game is. And it's But it's more than that. Like, you have the good guys versus the bad guys, Mortar versus the light side, and the good guys are weaker, the bad guys are much stronger, but the good guys are just trying to get Frodo over to the other end of the line and trying to guess and move your pieces, and you're not sure which piece is Frodo. It's very simple, a lot of strategy, and I'm surprised this one is not really a bigger hit now, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is a resurgence with the new Lord of the Rings TV show coming, if we see this one come back out at some point. Number 5 is Lost Cities. Of all the two-player Kosmos games, this one is the most popular, for sure. It's still in print now. It's a simple game of you playing cards on your side, building ascending cards, trying to get as big of a number as you can. But if you play just a few cards and not enough, you will lose points. You're holding cards in your hand. You hold cards you know your opponent wants, but you're also holding cards that will help you out later. It's very stressful, very tense. It's, for me, the game I play with my wife the most in this line. We've just had a blast, a great game, Lost Cities. Number 4 is Starship Catan. Starship Catan is a funny little card game because it's based on Starfarers of Catan, which is based on Catan. But Starship Catan is a very different beast. You might say, I don't really like Catan. Duh. Try this one out. In fact, this one was made later on as an ocean-going pirate game, but the Starship Catan is another two-player game that has trading in it, and you have the spaceships. In fact, this box, you can barely close it with the amount of components in this small little box. You have a spaceship, you're going through some piles, you're trying to sell resources, get resources, look for things. Sometimes you run across pirates. There's a bit of memory in the game, but it's not that bad. It's just remembering what deck a planet might be in. And then just diving through these piles, upgrading your engines and guns. Very cool game. I really wish this one was currently in print. Number 3 is a series of games, but they made a name for themselves here from Kosmos, and that is Exit the Game. Now, Exit is in the escape room style games. This one made the biggest splash when this first started out. It's still going on now. They had a jigsaw version of it. There's an advent calendar of it. But these are just little escape room games. They are disposable. When you play it, you're done because you're cutting things, ripping things, going through the box. I feel like they may have reached the limits of the system of Exit, but they're still very solid, very fun little games. And if you like the escape room genre, these work really well. I think they started off stronger than they finished, but there's some that are better than other ones in there. I've reviewed many of them on this channel. But just this design team, the couple who put this together, they're just phenomenal designers, and you can really see that in the Exit games. Number 2 is Targi. Now, Targi is probably the most critically acclaimed of the Kosmos two-player line, and for good reason. Another two-player game, and it's a worker placement game. There's very few good worker placement games for 2 players. This one is fantastic, as you're placing workers on the outside, and then where they cross are the cards you get, and you're sitting there thinking, please don't go there, please don't go there. And again, you're just getting resources, turning these resources in for points. But it is fantastic. There's an expansion out for it now, but even without the expansion, the game is amazing, and this is one of the few that's really grown in popularity as time has gone by. And number 1 for me is actually the newest one on this list, but it has done really well. And again, another tie, even though they're essentially the same game. This is The Crew. And for me, it would be the Deep Sea mission, although the Crew, the outer space one, they're both, the new one for me pretty much completely replaces the original one, but this is a trick-taking cooperative game. A game in which you're working together to accomplish some sort of goal, and it is fantastic. This has worked so well. I played it with people who only play trick-taking games, and they've loved it. I played it with people who don't like trick-taking games, and they've enjoyed it. It just is... Man, it's one of my favorite games. It's fantastic, it's simple, it's fun, it gives you that kind of tense feeling. It has limited communication, but it has limited communication with a point, which I think helps out a lot. So that's my favorite small box Kosmos game, The Crew. What's yours? What are your favorite games from the small box versions of Kosmos? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.